Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
Today on Spotlight. In 1960, more than 2,000 people crowded into a St. Louis temple to hear Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak. And then an Emmy Award-winning story about an icon whose courage helped change the world. Plus, a civil rights pioneer who said people should always show up wherever the need is greatest. But first, Dr. King's story told in a larger-than-life way at the Black Rep. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight. The Black Rep kicked off their 2024 season with the world premiere of Hold On, a powerful play that delves into the pivotal voting rights protests of 1965. Join us as we reflect on this captivating performance, bringing to life a defining moment in American history.
He can't do that anymore. He can't ignore this movement. Not anymore.
This may look like old newsreel footage of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but actually it's the actor Enoch King, no relation, playing Dr. King on stage at the Black Rep.
Not now when we have come so far and sacrificed so much.
King, the actor, portrays King, the activist, in a new play about the rough and tumble fight for voting rights in the Deep South in the mid-60s. It was a bloody battle remembered today simply by the name of the place where it happened. Selma.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Borrowing from the lyrics of that civil rights anthem, the play is called Hold On.
This is our moment.
It is the first show of the 2024 season at the Black Rep, and the first time it has been performed anywhere.
This is the 24th world premiere for the Black Rep.
Mr. President.
This telling of the story is framed through the tumultuous tug of war between Dr. King and President Johnson, who had similar agendas but different timetables.
What I tell people a lot when I'm trying to give them the shorthand of what the play is, I tell them basically, if you know the film Selma, this is it on stage.
And that's largely because the man who wrote the play also wrote the movie. His name is Paul Webb, and he is neither black nor American. Webb became aware of what happened in Selma while doing research for an early draft of the screenplay for Steven Spielberg's film Lincoln.
I thought, wow, why has no one written about this? And at the time, in fact, I mean, still maybe, it's one of those kind of mysteries, really.
You've seen this list.
Before the reckoning in Selma, blacks who tried registering to vote in the Deep South had to first correctly answer absurd and irrelevant questions.
How many bubbles in the average soap bar? Application denied. You may go.
What happened in Selma in March of 1965 began after an Alabama state trooper killed an unarmed civil rights protester named Jimmy Lee Jackson. To protest Jackson's killing, activists set out to march from Selma to Montgomery, but were brutally attacked by troopers and a sheriff's posse as they crossed out of Selma on the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
We are interrupting our Saturday night theater feature.
That night, when network television showed footage of the brutality, it stirred the moral conscience of the nation. March 7th, 1965, would become known as Bloody Sunday.
It is too soon to go back asking for more civil rights. The Senate isn't ready, and what's more, the country isn't ready.
Then I have to try and make them ready.
In the play, I think that it really is Dr. King's story. And I think that as we look at history as it moves, it really tells that story in an epic fashion.
Come on, Ralph, let's go to Selma.
No one in Washington's heard of Selma.
In terms of the historical events that take place, I've learned how strategic everything was, even if it seemed like it was kind of just galvanized by passion.
There is no Negro problem. There is no Southern problem. There is no Northern problem. There is only an American
problem. We are met here today as Americans, not Democrats or Republicans. We are met here as Americans to solve this problem.
In this play, history literally repeats itself. And in some ways, so has real life.
It is all of us.
When Paul Webb wrote the first draft of the play in 2005, the question of voting rights in America was thought to be settled law. But that has not turned out to be the case, perhaps making Hold On more timely than it was ever meant to be.
That's what this play says to me. We're working for something that's really important as we're living in a society that is dealing with the avalanche of negative results of watching voting rights get dismantled.
In looking at how far we've come, you can also see how much work we still have to do. And I think that will be the takeaway from this. The struggle during the civil rights era, the sacrifices that were made, the gains that were made, are all being attacked again now. And so we really have to be vigilant and to be careful, or else we are on the verge, really, of looking like we could repeat that history.
HEC Media's mission is to strengthen and promote the education, arts, and cultural communities in the St. Louis metropolitan area. By shining a light on big stories bringing change to St. Louis, covering events important to our city, forging community partnerships, and producing award-winning content on the arts, authors, education, culture, and more. It's all at hecmedia.org.
History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, president of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis, and this is History Spotlight. In November of 1960, more than 2,000 people crowded into this very room to hear Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak. Public historian Cecily Hunter tells us about his visit.
On November 27, 1960, 2,000 people would attend United Hebrew Temple to hear the speech of Dr. Martin Luther King, which was titled Future of Integration. During the 33rd season of the Liberal Forum of the Jewish Community Centers Association, Martin Luther King would be among a list of other 4 distinguished speakers who would come to St. Louis and speak about various topics. An attendee could purchase a ticket for $1.25, though if they were a student, the tickets would be 75 cents. Can you imagine? According to Rabbi Grauman, Martin was so weary that evening, and there were so many places he was unwelcome, even in danger. I invited him into my study at the temple, gave him some hot tea. It was a cold November night, and led him to my big leather armchair. I think he dozed for a few minutes and then came out of the room refreshed and ready to meet the 2,000 people that had gathered to hear his message of brotherhood. An account from an attendee on that evening mentioned the place was packed, jam-packed, and his speech was mesmerizing. Newspapers provide coverage and reported after the event that Martin Luther King Jr. stated, "The United States is standing on the threshold of the most creative period in the development of race relations." He spoke very frankly about the Ku Klux Klan and White Citizens Council by saying that they do not stop with legal tactics, and the forces of defiance present certain barriers. Although he talked about the different challenges that the United States faced, ultimately, Dr. King wanted to elicit a constant message of nonviolence and that the fact that integration could happen. Today, the building that hosted Martin Luther King Jr., as well as the 2,000 people who crowded this space, now serves as the Library and Research Center for the Missouri Historical Society. A plaque commemorating this major monumentous moment in celebration of Dr. King in that moment is now housed in the reading room.
Next week on History Spotlight, the reason for the St. Louis baby tooth survey of the 1960s.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Arts and education to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries, individual craft achievements to overall excellence. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
Don't think of the Civil Rights Movement and Black History Month as something outside of you. My dear friend, Black History Month merely brings up an issue that is your issue as well. Are you equal? This equality, your own place in life, and it is the place that you're expected to maintain throughout your life, through adulthood. Knowing who you are, what you've come to contribute, and what you have a right to, and what you have a right to contribute is the most important gift you have in your life.
Perhaps no one better understands that gift than Dr. Melba Pattillo Beals. At the age of 15, this trailblazer was one of 9 African-American students chosen to integrate the all-white Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas.
I wanted the resources it offered me because the students from that school went to the top universities in the world.
But her hopes of attending Central High School were met with oppression and terror.
First day I went to Central High School, it was an incredible mob, so there was ugliness there.
Multiple attempts to safely enter the school and stay in classes were unsuccessful, due in part by the illegal segregation orders by Arkansas Governor Orville Faubus. First, the Arkansas National Guard prevented the students from entering Central High. Violent racists traveled in from the South to Little Rock to stop the integration at all costs. Then the local police were overpowered by the growing mob of hateful protesters. The escalating violence took an emotional toll not only on the students, but their parents as well.
Yes, they suffered terribly. They made a sacrifice. They worried about us daily. Sometimes they had to come to school and they risked their own lives.
Little Rock was out of control and in crisis, a true state of emergency. President Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne to restore order and ensure the safety of the students. The armed soldiers drove the Little Rock Nine to and from Central High and escorted them through the protesting crowds and into Central High School. This was a welcome reprieve for the parents, so much so they jointly sent a telegram to the White House to thank the president. But for the students, troubles continued inside the school, despite the presence of the soldiers who escorted them to their classrooms and stood guard outside the classroom door. The white students who were friendly to the black students were also met with hostility from others.
There were people in there who had souls and who would have done it differently, but whenever they tried to do it differently, they too were threatened and mistreated.
So how did this 15-year-old find her way to endure the heartbreaking persecution? She received life-changing words of wisdom from someone who related completely to her struggle. It was Dr. Martin Luther King.
I met him a couple of times, and on the first time I met him in Mrs. Bates' basement, all 9 were sitting there, and I was just whine. And he said, Melba, you are not doing this for yourself. Don't be selfish. You're doing this for generations yet unborn.
To fight her fears, young Melba received spiritual guidance from her grandmother.
From the very beginning of my life, I was taught the Bible, made to repeat Bible verses, always told that God is with me.
The teen recorded her fears and pleas to God in her daily journal. Decades later, Dr. Melba Pattillo Beals included many of those journal entries in her best-selling book, Warriors Don't Cry.
That is a book which tells you what happened in Central High School once I was inside, day by day. And it explains to you the process one goes through in one's head. You know, as a child, certainly you don't think of death or attack or any of that as being something that is in your face now. And what that did was to teach me that it is in your face now. And it really made me alert and gave me strength that I exhibit today.
Her first-person historical account from Warriors Don't Cry became a part of the social studies curriculum for middle and high schools around the country. It also launched a healing journey for Dr. Beals.
God has brought me a long, long way and kept all the promises that my grandmother made on his behalf. She said, be patient. God is with you, and he sees your need. And so I see that equality that I hoped for and prayed for and begged for.
Later on Spotlight, a one-woman show dedicated to the story of Harriet Tubman. Sister Mary Antona Ebo was born in Bloomington, Illinois in 1924. In 1946, she and two others were the first African-American women to enter the Sisters of St. Mary in St. Louis. She became a powerful force in the civil rights movement when she was asked to join the nation's religious leaders at the 1965 Voting Rights March in Selma.
And what the people were actually demonstrating for was their right to register to vote. This wasn't even to go and cast a ballot. It was that they were not even allowed to go to register to vote. And I usually use an expression with my own folks. When you don't go to vote, it's like spitting on the graves of the very people who have died to give us that possibility of being self-determining. And we have that responsibility to do so.
I feel it a privilege to be here today. My name, as they have said, is Sister Mary Antona. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm stationed in St. Mary's Infirmary.
The Sisters of Selma made history as they were the first delegation of nuns to join the protest.
Andrew Young was at the podium and he was talking. He looked up and he saw her. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, one of the great moral forces of the world has just stepped in the door." And everybody turned around and saw this black sister standing there.
The six of us little nuns walking across the stage of history, scared is not enough. That we have to take a position, and it has to be, for me, it has to be based on my faith, that the Lord will make a way somehow, and I will be a part of that way, and therefore I got to keep going.
Once described as one of the great moral forces of the world, Sister Ebo's civil rights work did not end with Selma. She continued to advocate for equality until her death in 2017 at the age of 93.
I know that the saying from Romans 8:28, for those who love the Lord, all things work together for good according to God's purpose. And that's what we're trying to do, is to be there where the need is the greatest, and to be there for the people that have the greater need, and giving of the very best that you have to give.
For original programming and award-winning content, explore hecmedia.org. Find all of your favorite genres, including the arts and sciences. Go in-depth with the latest research. Get insight into new technologies. Learn about breakthrough discoveries. Find it all in one place. Explore hecmedia.org.
Frankie Muse Freeman wore many hats in her remarkable 101 years on this planet.
I had been appointed as the first female commissioner of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Served for 16 years under 4 presidents.
Wife, mother, lawyer, and civil rights activist. As a youth in her hometown of Danville, Virginia, Freeman regularly faced racial discrimination and promised herself that she would find a way to fight the bias she faced on a daily basis.
We walked to school because our parents did not, it was absolutely racially segregated, and so black people were expected to sit in the back of the bus and no way. So we walked wherever we had to go, unless we were riding in a car. But we would not. One of the things that our parents agreed was that there are things in terms of the segregation that you had no choice. But if you had a choice, you rejected it.
Freeman spent her life fighting discrimination and helping to establish civil rights policies, including helping to end school and housing discrimination in St. Louis.
I came to St. Louis thinking that maybe I could become a member of the staff of one of the law schools. They were going to give me a job, but I was determined that I was going to try cases and I was going to be a trial lawyer. I was denied. Then I told Shelby, my husband, well, I'm going to open my own law office, and that's what I did. And I associated myself with the NAACP and told them I'd be available for Bruton versus Board of Education, filed in 1949. It was my first civil rights case, which we handled, and we won it in the circuit court. There's an individual responsibility for each one of us to do our homework and make it better. And I'm hoping that each one of us will do our homework and make it better.
For more St. Louis stories, subscribe to the HEC YouTube channel. Connect STL from HEC Media.
HEC Media, bringing you culture and community. Find all of HEC's positive programming and award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
Oh, get that freedom. Oh, freedom! I got to do my best in every single way. I want to live out the freedom that I have today. I want to honor those who came before me, who fought and died for a life they couldn't see. Freedom!
So the name of the show is called Harriet Tubman, an American Hero, and it falls under the category of a one-person show. So it's historical in content, and I play her life from age 9 to 92, and I play all of the roles, all of the different stages that she goes through, and the characters that she interacts with.
And even though you don't have to call nobody massa, and you can spend your money the way you want, you can't even vote.
But when I looked at Harriet Tubman's story, well, I thought that that was a story that I knew just like everybody else always feels that they know. But when I started researching, I was really blown away by the incredible energy and strategy that was used through the Underground Railroad and how she succeeded.
I have heard that you have made 19 trips secretly to free slaves. Is that true, Harriet Tubman? Oh, yes. I freed about 300. We need trustworthy and loyal people like you, Harriet Tubman. Would you be...
She was the first woman in the military in the United States to create and lead a military campaign. Through some of those, she freed like an additional 700 slaves. She really believed in her freedom. In fact, one of her quotes is that she felt that she had a right to two things, liberty
and freedom or
death.
And if I can't have one, I will have the other.
I think it's really timely because right now in the United States, we hear a lot about division, specifically, black and white. But in this story, I really saw how black people and white people really had to work vigorously together to free people through the Underground Railroad. And I felt like that's a really important story to tell.
Grow it so that there is freedom and social justice for all.
So she was always growing and redefining herself. And to me, that shows that we can continue to create for the rest of our lives. And that's how I want to be.
Out of my way, girl. That overseer pushed me. Look at me like he hate me. Don't make no sense, grown man hating me like that. He don't even know me or my name.
What I felt is that the show was good for their self-esteem. And the reason why is because it showed where they came from. They were completely into it on the edge of their seats. And then when she crossed the line into freedom, they just broke out into the spontaneous applause.
That's it. The Mason-Dixon line. One step from treachery into freedom.
By the end of the show, they were standing taller. And I saw their self-esteem grow. They came from a people who persevered and they didn't let anything stop them. And I felt like they took that on and gained pride about their heritage and therefore and thus who they are today. I just want them to reach their full potential. I just want them to know that they can be and do what they want to do. One thing that the show ends with is she says that whether you're born
on this land,
free or a slave,
I want you to keep the faith. And remember this, behind every great dream is a dreamer. And each of you here have the strength inside, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars and change the world.
Next week, telling the story of St. Louis through a variety of maps. Plus, teaching all ages science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.